Grandpa Thomas hummed softly as he moved around his cozy kitchen, the scent of roasting chicken and fresh herbs filling the air. It was a rare day when the whole family was coming together under one roof, and he felt a warmth in his chest that hadn't been there for months. Finally, he murmured to himself, everyone all in one place again. The clinking of pots and pans was accompanied by the soft ticking of the old wall clock, a comforting soundtrack to his preparations. The house, a sturdy brick home nestled on the quiet street, had been Thomas's lifelong project. He'd spent decades designing and building it with his late wife, Margaret. Even now, after all these years and her passing, every corner of the house whispered memories of their shared life. Thomas ran a hand along the wooden countertop, his eyes lingering on a small stack of letters resting near the edge. One envelope in particular caught his attention, plain, unassuming, yet somehow heavy with meaning. As the doorbell rang, he quickly slid the letter aside, not wanting it to be seen just yet. Despite the excitement bubbling inside him, there was an undercurrent of unease Thomas couldn't quite shake. The last time the family had gathered, things hadn't gone smoothly. There had been quiet arguments, cold glances, and an uncomfortable distance he hadn't expected. Yet, today, he held on to hope. Family meant everything to him, and he was determined to make this dinner a moment of reunion, a chance to heal old wounds. The house was ready, the table set with care, and his heart quietly wished for laughter to fill the rooms once more. The sound of a car pulling into the driveway caught Grandpa Thomas's attention. He wiped his hands on his apron and went to the door, greeting his daughter Linda with a warm smile. She stepped inside, her overly bright eyes and forced cheerfulness immediately noticeable. "Hi, Dad. It's so good to see you," she said. But when their eyes met, she quickly looked away, her gaze darting nervously toward the living room. Grandpa sensed something was off but chose to ignore it, telling himself she was just excited. Soon after, the front door opened again, and in walked his son Mark, followed closely by Mark's wife, Julie. They exchanged hushed whispers as they entered, shooting quick, cautious glances at Grandpa. Julie smiled politely but didn't speak much, while Mark's usual confident demeanor seemed a bit restrained. A couple of grandchildren trailed behind them, unusually quiet and somewhat shy in their grandfather's presence. The atmosphere in the house felt heavy, a stark contrast to the warmth of the food simmering in the kitchen. Grandpa Thomas tried to brush off the tension, attributing it to their busy lives and the long gaps since their last gathering. After all, families weren't always perfect, and he hoped tonight would help mend whatever distance had grown between them. He moved to the dining table and began serving appetizers, laying out plates of stuffed mushrooms and cheese. As he worked, his mind wandered back to the days when his late wife Margaret would host these dinners, her laughter filling every corner of the room. He missed those moments deeply, but they gave him strength to keep the tradition alive. Linda's voice broke through his reverie. "Dad, have you checked your mail or your phone lately? There's some important stuff you should be aware of," she said, watching him carefully. Grandpa nodded, but didn't want to worry them, so he replied lightly, "Everything's fine, dear. Just the usual bills and junk mail." Mark chimed in, looking around the large living room. "This place feels so big for just one person these days, doesn't it?" There was a strange edge to his tone, as if he was testing Grandpa's reaction. Grandpa smiled but didn't answer, quietly wondering why his son was bringing up the size of the house now. Despite the subtle unease in the room, Grandpa focused on making everyone comfortable. He placed the last appetizer on the table and gestured toward the living room, saying, "Let's all sit and enjoy. It's good to have the family together again." Yet, beneath the smiles and polite chatter, the night was shaping up to be far different than he had hoped. As the evening progressed, the chatter around the dinner table grew quieter, replaced by an undercurrent of tension that Grandpa Thomas couldn't quite place. Julie cleared her throat, drawing everyone's attention. "We actually have some important news to share with you after dinner," she said, her voice calm but serious. The words hung in the air, making Grandpa's heart skip a beat. Across the table, Linda's fingers danced quickly over her phone beneath the table, her eyes flickering nervously to Grandpa every few seconds. Thomas noticed but chose not to comment, telling himself she was just anxious or maybe coordinating something for later. Mark, trying to lighten the mood, casually remarked, "There's a nice assisted living facility not far from here. They have great reviews, and it's probably safer for someone your age, Dad." The comment felt out of place, almost rehearsed, but Grandpa forced a smile. Inside, a small voice whispered unease, but he pushed it aside. "They're just looking out for me," he thought. "Maybe this is their way of caring." Wanting to keep the evening flowing, Grandpa excused himself from the table to fetch a bottle of wine from the basement. As he descended the familiar, creaky stairs, muffled voices drifted from the hallway upstairs. He paused, leaning against the cool wooden railing, straining to hear. Words reached his ears. "Papers, sign," before he changes his mind. The phrases sliced through the warmth he tried to hold on to, replacing it with a cold knot of suspicion. He shook his head gently and told himself it was probably nothing, maybe discussing some mundane paperwork. Yet, the weight of those words lingered as he poured the wine and returned to the dinner table, a quiet storm brewing inside his heart. The dining room was filled with the soft glow of candlelight as everyone settled into their seats. Plates clinked, and glasses were raised in tentative toasts. Grandpa Thomas smiled warmly, feeling a flicker of hope that this night might still turn out to be a joyful reunion. Linda cleared her throat and slowly rose from her chair, the smile on her face a little too tight, a little too forced. The room quieted, all eyes turning toward her. "Dad," she began, voice trembling just enough to betray her nerves, "we wanted to make tonight special. Really special." She paused, glancing at the others for support. "Because, well, it's your last night here." The words hit Grandpa like a sudden chill. Time seemed to freeze for a moment as he sat there, mouth slightly open, trying to process what he had just heard. Last night here. His mind raced, searching for any possible meaning, any way to soften the blow. Linda continued, her voice breaking slightly now. "We've decided it's best to sell the house. You can't manage it all on your own anymore." She looked down at her hands, avoiding his gaze. "We've arranged for you to move into a facility that will take better care of you. It's what's safest." Mark nodded, his expression guarded but firm. "We've already spoken with a real estate agent. They're coming first thing in the morning to start the process. We just want what's best for you, Dad." Grandpa's hands clenched the edge of the table, knuckles whitening. The warmth of the evening drained away, replaced by a cold ache of betrayal. The house he had built, the memories it held, everything seemed to crumble in that moment. The dinner wasn't a celebration. It was a farewell party disguised as a family gathering, a way to gently push him out without confrontation. His voice was barely a whisper as he finally spoke. "So, this was all just a goodbye party." Linda's eyes glistened with unshed tears, but she didn't deny it. Julie looked away, uncomfortable. The grandchildren shuffled in their seats, sensing the shift in the room's atmosphere. Grandpa swallowed the lump in his throat. He had always thought family meant loyalty, love, and respect. Tonight, he realized, it could also mean plans made behind closed doors, secrets spoken in hushed tones. But deep inside, a quiet resolve began to form. This wasn't the end of his story. Grandpa Thomas opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. His voice trembled, barely audible as he finally managed. "I don't understand. After everything, this is how it ends." His eyes searched theirs, hoping for some flicker of compassion, but found only uncomfortable silence. In that moment, a flood of memories washed over him. He saw himself decades ago, laying the first bricks of this very house, alongside Margaret. Their hands, rough and worn, working side by side under the sun, dreaming of a future filled with family laughter and love. He recalled the promises they made, to always protect this home, to keep it a sanctuary for those they loved. How had it come to this? The walls that once held so much joy now seemed to close in like a prison. Mark's voice broke through his thoughts, firm but strained. "Dad, this isn't easy for any of us, but it's for your safety. The house is too big, too much for you to manage alone. We're just trying to do what's best." Grandpa looked into his son's eyes, searching for sincerity but seeing only obligation and something else, perhaps guilt or frustration. Linda shifted uncomfortably, her gaze fixed on the table, avoiding his eyes entirely. Her silence spoke volumes, torn between loyalty to her father and the plans they'd made. Julie added quietly, "You know, once the house sells, it will free up assets that can help cover your care and other expenses. It's practical." Her words felt cold, a thinly veiled reminder that money was at the heart of this decision. Thomas's heart ached. It wasn't just the house, it was the feeling of being pushed aside, reduced to a burden. Yet, beneath the hurt, a quiet strength began to grow. He would not simply accept this fate, not without a fight. Instead of reacting with anger or despair, Grandpa Thomas took a slow, steady breath and allowed a faint smile to touch his lips. "Thank you for letting me know," he said softly, his voice calm and measured. His family exchanged puzzled glances. This was not the emotional outburst they had perhaps expected. But beneath that quiet exterior, a plan was already unfolding in his mind. What they didn't know was that Thomas had been prepared for this moment all along. The house, the very place they wanted to force him out of, was not theirs to claim. Years ago, when his wife Margaret had grown ill, they had quietly arranged a trust to protect the home, a legal shield that kept the property out of reach from anyone but him. No one in the family had ever suspected. The papers were tucked safely away, signed and notarized, ensuring the house remained his until the end. Thomas excused himself from the table, saying he needed to take a phone call. In the quiet of the study, he dialed his lawyer's number, his fingers steady despite the turmoil. "It's time," he said simply. "Everything is in place." As he spoke, he glanced at the envelope on the counter, the one he had hidden earlier. The letter inside was more than just words. It was a final declaration. The house, along with all remaining assets, was designated to be donated to a local charity that supported elderly people in need. The family would inherit nothing. The plan was his quiet revenge, not out of spite, but as a way to protect his legacy from those who had turned against him. Returning to the dinner room, he folded his hands calmly on his lap. The room, once filled with expectation, now felt heavy with uncertainty. Grandpa Thomas sat quietly, knowing the real goodbye had yet to come. But this time, it would be on his terms. The dinner continued in a strange, awkward rhythm. Grandpa Thomas moved gracefully around the table, serving dessert with the same care he had shown all evening, as if nothing had changed. Plates of warm apple pie and vanilla ice cream were passed quietly, punctuated only by the low murmur of conversation that failed to regain its earlier energy. As the family discussed their plans for the coming days, the real estate agent's visit, the logistics of moving him to the facility, Thomas listened patiently, a calm certainty settling over him. He knew their carefully laid plans would unravel before sunrise. The house wasn't theirs to claim, and the trust protecting it was ironclad. When the last forkful was eaten and the room fell silent, Grandpa looked up, his eyes steady and clear. "Thank you for coming to my goodbye party," he said softly, his voice cutting through the stillness. "But I'm not the one leaving." The room froze. Linda's face paled, Mark's jaw tightened, and Julie's eyes widened in shock. Thomas stood slowly and reached into his pocket. "The locks will be changed tomorrow morning. This house stays mine, until the very end." He held their stunned gazes for a moment longer, then sat back down with a quiet smile. The night had shifted irrevocably, and the real goodbye was theirs to say, not his. Early the next morning, the sharp sound of a locksmith's tools echoed through the quiet neighborhood. Grandpa Thomas stood calmly by the door, watching as the old locks were replaced with new, secure ones. Soon after, his family arrived, their faces flushed with anger and disbelief. Linda stormed forward first, voice shaking as she demanded, "Dad, what is this? Why are you locking us out?" Mark followed, equally furious. "You can't do this. We're the family. This house is supposed to be ours now." Grandpa Thomas reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a neatly folded document. With steady hands, he handed it to them. "This is the trust agreement. The house belongs to me until the day I choose to leave it. No one can touch it, and certainly not without my consent." They read in silence, the reality sinking in. Their plans had been stopped cold, legally and irrevocably. Later, as the sun climbed higher, Grandpa walked through the quiet, empty rooms of the house he had built with his wife. The walls held memories, laughter, love, and promises kept. Stopping before a framed photo of Margaret, he gently touched the glass and whispered, "We kept our promise." Though the house was silent now, it was still his sanctuary. And in that moment, Thomas felt a deep peace, knowing that some things, family, legacy, and love, could never be taken away.